Hello and welcome to Duck Chats. We're so glad you're here. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Brittany Sweeney, and this is my girl Oyster. She's a Welsh Harlequin, and she's super not excited about being in my lap right now and being away from her friends, but she wanted to say hi. As you'll notice, we don't have Jeannette Beranger, our poultry expert today. She's on vacation, but I still wanted to hang out and say hello to everyone and celebrate Duck Month with you. It's one of my favorites. We do have a great treat for you today. Jeannette and I did an interview. I'm going to put her down. There we go. So she can go back and see her friends and be much happier. Jeannette and I attended the 2001 Ohio National Poultry Show. We met lots of amazing breeders and people there. We had such a great time, and we stopped and we chatted with Connie Abeln, and she told us all about her Dutch Hookbill. She's been a longtime breeder and has some beautiful ducks. So we're going to air that interview with you today. Before that, I just want to say a big thank you to Mana Pro. Thank you for sponsoring Duck Chats today. We appreciate you. I'm going to play a quick little commercial from them. It's about 1 minute, so hopefully you'll stick around. You'll see some other duck breeders in there, so we'll be right back. Stay with us.
Champions, colleagues,
roommates,
and personal trainers.
Whatever role they play,
they're an important part of our lives.
In their quiet way,
and their not so quiet way.
they keep us young.
On our feet,
on the go.
They pull us back to nature.
And push us toward the next adventure.
And as much as we count on them,
they count on us all the more.
To nurture their lives.
With the same commitment.
To protecting them.
Helping them grow.
And thrive.
Treating them.
As well as they treat us. By giving them a little more of our lives.
Because no matter what role they play,
out here
or in here,
we're here to make their lives the best they can be.
Mana Pro, nurturing life.
All right, welcome back. We're glad you're still here celebrating ducks with us. Thank you to Mana Pro for featuring heritage breeds and for sponsoring our duck chat today. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and play our pre-recorded interview with Connie, so you can learn all about the amazing Dutch Hookbills, which are critically endangered. If you have any questions while you're thinking about it, I'll still be around. And even though I'm new to raising ducks, they've been my pandemic project. I've fallen in love with them, and I will try to answer as many of your questions as I can at the end. And here we go. Big thank you to Connie for chatting with us. And here she is.
Connie Abeln, and I have here a Dutch Hookbill. He's a bibbed Dutch Hookbill, and I'm from Pacific, Missouri. My sister got me started on Hookbills about 8 years ago. So this guy is in good shape. He's he's a little over 2, and so he knows how to stay clean, and he's almost always looks really nice. The youngsters are constantly getting new feathers. Those two are young, and their feathers are wearing out because they're about to get new feathers, and they'll go through a kind of a growth spurt. It's kind of interesting. Seems like the girls go through a growth spurt right before they start laying. Well, my dad raised prize-winning chickens and rabbits for years, and so in terms of general breeding information, I think it would have been my dad. My dad always said, you don't know what you're looking at until you're looking at a 2-year-old. And so he said, it's not really worth your while to breed somebody before you really know their full potential. And so a lot of times if you breed them early, you can end up breeding in a lot of problems that you don't know about. You wait a couple of years and you look at that bird, you know what you've got, and you can decide which bird is appropriate to breed. This is a 2-year-old. hookbills are an interesting, I mean, they have hook in their name, so you kind of expect them to all have hooked bills, and they do to some extent, but some of them have much less so than others. However, even the ones that have less so are really, you can tell the difference between their nose, their bill, and the other birds. Now there are three, there's a straight, there's a medium, and there's an extreme hook. Right now my extreme hooks are at home.
So this one would be a medium?
Yeah, mine would be, more a medium.
And what would this one be?
Well, these are actually both kind of medium. A straight would be like, more like that chocolate.
Yeah.
They don't always go down, but you can tell it partly in the way that they're, if you look at them from on front, they have a very distinctive look. And they tend to be broader. People say in some of the literature, you know, when people are talking about it, they'll say, oh, well, you know, they have that hookbill is a big advantage in foraging. No, it's just a hookbill. They're good foragers by the way, but it's partly in the structure and how everything goes together. I raised runners before I had these, and they might be the most similar birds to a hookbill, and there is a drastic difference, not just in the way a runner carries themselves, but in the way a hookbill walks, and in the way they enter a flock-driven bird. And yet, they like to kind of segregate off and mate off with one partner. It's kind of a weird thing because that's not at all what happens all the time and move around as a big flock. These guys are very individual. When I let them out of their pens and and mostly I think what they're saying is, I'm out and you're not. Haha. They're extremely good layers too. Actually, they're better layers than my runners. Although my runners are very good layers. I got a good set of them, but these guys are good layers and they will set on their own babies. We don't find that out very often because in trying to spread hookbills around, we rely on sending people or giving them eggs to hatch in their own area. But to tell the truth, they're wonderful mothers and dads. Now, compared to, for example, a Nankin chicken, the dads in the Nankin chicken, they'll keep their chicks warm and stuff. They'll tell the babies to eat. Dad hookbills are a little more standoffish, but they will go after a bird that does not stay with its mom. They're kind of a dad that says, "Do what your mom says." I think the biggest traits you can select for are health, and that's a huge thing. You want to make sure that you have a good, healthy bird, and some birds just are going to be better foragers. I like my foragers. I like to see them go out. If a bird has a choice between bugs and feed, and they choose bugs, they're on my list. If they choose grain, they might have just had bad time for a while if they started with somebody else, but for the most part, they have to be a calm bird. As you can see, a hookbill is a pretty calm bird, and they're a listener bird. You talk, and they listen. They get to know people more so than a runner. For example, a runner can be very standoffish. They'll accept food from me because they know me. I'm their feeder. And these guys will accept food from other people at home, not maybe in this setting where things are kind of chaos. But you can see he's very interested in the stuff I'm saying. He's interested in everything that's going on. Very smart birds. They're not as much flyers if parts of their flock are still confined right there. So I would suggest that people who have problems with flying keep 1 or 2 of their flock penned up, and then they'll go visit them, but they won't feel like their whole flock has to go somewhere else. Well, there's for Dutch Hookbill, there is a British standard, and the color can be challenging in the Americans because there's so much variety of color, a lot of variety of color. And so when you get to somebody like this who's a dusky, he may have something underneath. I showed another guy who looks just like him in my flock, but he is half mallard, and he looks exactly like this guy. So the color can be a challenge. The other challenge is, I think, you have to have a bird that's willing to get along with the other birds, and every once in a while, too, because in many cases, I think the extra colors, I mean, you can read in the Ashton book, the other colors came from outcrossing. And when you go outcrossing, you're diluting the standard to some degree, but you have to then come back to the standard. And since we don't have a standard, I have the British poultry standard that I use as a reference because there is no American standard. Well, ducks are very fast growers, so I think a lot of people who have never had ducks before get to this place where they say they're growing too fast, and they grow really fast, but they feather out later, than most people expect. They can go outside. Most of mine are outside by 16 weeks, but they're not at this point, like, they're sexually mature sometimes by 6 months, but if it's late in the season, it may not make a difference because they're not laying. So as soon as they decide to lay, they lay much earlier in the spring than you would expect. Most of them start in February. So if you have a youngster like some of these who hatched in July, and then they're not laying yet, but they seem to be sexually mature, they're doing all the right stuff, but it doesn't make any difference because no eggs are coming out. So in February, I would expect to see babies hatched out of this group, but now there are 3, there's a straight, there's dusky, he may have something underneath. I showed another guy who looks just like him in my flock, but he is half mallard, and he looks exactly like this guy, so the color can be a challenge. In July, and then they're not laying yet, but they seem to be sexually mature, they're doing all the right stuff, but it doesn't make any difference because no eggs are coming out. So in February, I would expect to see babies hatched out of this group, but that's just a guess, of course, and it depends on who you put them with. The boys are very quick to catch on to what they're supposed to do. Sometimes with chickens, the boys are kind of slow to catch on. You have eggs before the rooster have any idea what's going on. So when I first see a bird's color, because I want several different colors, the color makes right away will make me decide to keep a particular bird. Like if I want snowies, I'm going to say, oh, that's a snowy, I'm going to keep it. That's a brown duck, I don't know how that's going to turn out, I'm going to wait. Okay, but with other, like this pied one, when she was hatched, I don't have another pied. So it's like, oh, I'll keep that one and see what happens. However, that's a little unusual thing. When I'm going for something like a dusky, you really have to see that mature foliage, feathers. You have to see their feathers after they've had their first full round of molting, before you know that they're going to be show quality. I have a real nice guy here who made Best of Variety. And you know, he's going to be a really nice bird, but the problem with him is that it's not a good quality of bib, and you can't see that when they're babies because they're just a bunch of fluff. Can't see it when they get a little older, but you can see that definitely as they get closer to 2 years old and have been through that full year's worth of molts. And the problem is, of course, since ducks are seasonal, it's a little trickier because if they start mid-year versus starting in the winter, they're going to hit those molt phases differently, and that's why it's important to look for a while. Well, I know a lot of people will be disappointed to hear this, but I hatch my chicken eggs and my duck eggs exactly alike. I get 80% on the duck eggs, I get about 95% on the chicken eggs. I just don't change it. And I'm not as worried about it because when the ducks raise their own and hatch their own, they get about 80% fertility. Now you ship an egg, and shipping is a stress that is very difficult. You don't want to wash an egg before it's hatched. You want to keep them in a cool condition so they don't have a chance to start and stop, which is really the loss of a lot of fertility there, right? You think so. And make sure that you handle them as little as possible in getting them in there. Well, of course, as soon as you ship them, there's a whole lot of handling, and there's a whole lot of dryness. I tend to mark the air cell with a pencil, so if somebody sees all of the air cells come to them from a shipping and they're all much bigger, then they kind of know they need to up the humidity on their incubator for a little while anyway, until they get back into the range of where the duck egg is supposed to be at that age. Now, actually, that's part of my culling process. And so I want my ducks to be really good at being outdoor ducks. So their housing, it has to be outdoors. So I use wire cages. It's welded wire, 1 by 1 inch. A raccoon can reach through, but not very far. And so the ducks can stay away from them that way. Raccoons are my biggest predators. They have shelter where they can stay dry. They usually have their babies or roost or have their nest in a dog house or a dog crate with the door off of it. I'm very informal, and or a box. And so they just need some place where they can stay warm and dry if they choose to. But for example, with my runner ducks, if it gets cold and wet and rainy, they go inside. They go in their doghouse. If it's cold and wet and rainy for these guys, they have a doghouse, but chances are they'll be outside enjoying the weather, the little rain coming down, the little snowflakes. They like it. They're a very outdoor-oriented duck. So a duck that cannot handle those temperature extremes probably won't survive, and I don't think I've had very many examples of that in mind, but there's every once in a while we had polar vortex last year, and I lost 2 ducks. So not right away, but because of the weather change. So it was kind of tough.
Sorry about that glitch in the system. Let me see if I can get this video to replay. Again, I'm very sorry about that. I think it had something to do with my internet system today.
You have shelter where they can stay dry. They usually have their baby or roost or have their nest in a dog house or a dog crate with the door off of it. I'm very informal. And a place where they can stay warm and dry if they choose to. But for example, with my runner ducks, if it gets cold and wet and rainy, they go inside. They go in their dog house. If it's cold and wet and rainy for these guys, they have a dog house, but chances are they'll be outside enjoying the weather, the little rain coming down, the little snowflakes. They like it. They're a very outdoor-oriented duck. So a duck that cannot handle those temperature extremes probably won't survive. And I don't think I've had very many examples of that in mine, but there's every once in a while. We had polar vortex last year and I lost 2 ducks. So not right away, but because of the weather change. So it was kind of tough.
Do they perch?
No, they will go up on things and look around, but they don't actually perch. I don't butcher mine. This is a light duck. It doesn't make, I eat duck, but the ducks I eat are big ducks. This is a little 4 or 5 pound duck. It's easy for anybody to manage. They're really friendly, but they're wonderful egg layers. Absolutely fantastic egg layers. And they will just keep laying all season long. I don't think I have any right now, except the younger ones. These youngsters haven't started laying, but the ones I have who are laying, I don't have anybody under 200 eggs a year right now. I had some early on, but right now they're mostly 200 eggs a year. And that's a really good reason to wait until 2 years to find out if you want to keep a duck, if you want to make sure you're going to get those good layers. You have to measure a whole year's worth of eggs and also look at the pattern. They have a typical pattern for a setter, which is they lay some eggs, about a dozen or 2 eggs, and then they would sit on them in normal circumstances. If they don't sit, they stop for a while, and then they'll start up again about the time that they would start up if they had raised a bunch of youngsters, or if they had lost the youngsters, as they happens in the wild sometimes. No, you didn't lose any youngsters. Oh yeah, I think I can't remember the name of the book, the story book on raising ducks that Dave Holder, that's a really good resource. I think, and you know, you would think as many years as I've had ducks, I keep that as a reference all the time. I still look up things in there. You run into things all the time. That, you know, I have Ashton's books on raising ducks. Now a lot of it is kind of British weather oriented. So in certain seasons it's very appropriate for me, and in the real heat of summer I don't think they have that yet. So we'll see. But you know, those are good books in terms of how to raise them and what diseases to look for. I haven't had a lot of diseases in ducks. Every once in a while I'll have one that has kind of weaker legs. I put them aside. Sometimes that goes away and sometimes it doesn't. Ducks need more niacin. If they're getting into foraging and eating bugs, they're getting their niacin. If there's just relying on commercial feed, if it's a duck feed, they'll get their niacin, but sometimes not. I do supplement the oyster shell. I don't notice that the ducks use it a lot, but I don't see the chickens use it a lot, but I see the difference in the eggs and the chickens, so maybe they are. And then, actually, ducks are very reactive to every noise. There was a little pop in the background, and he went, any door that slams, anything that happens, they don't like to hear that at all. And it makes it for a very safe barn environment for chickens, because if you have chickens and ducks together, the ducks are going to notice everything and complain about it and talk, and then the chickens will say, oh yeah, we got to look out for that. Unless, of course, they're asleep. Because at night, the ducks don't sleep. Not very long. Well, there's really, should never hold them by the legs. Ever, ever, ever. No duck should ever be held by the legs, right? The easiest way to do them is from the wings. I think if a person's looking to raise Dutch Hookbills, it's kind of hard to just start off with any duck. And you probably want to start with a duck that's less expensive, just so you get the hang of it. But truthfully, with Dutch Hookbills, they're very easy to raise. They're amenable to many pen sizes. You can bring them to a show like this in a very small cage. They're fine with it. They don't. In fact, all of these 8 ducks rode to the show in a single cage. They became a flock almost immediately. I cannot do that with my chickens. And actually, but most ducks are pretty okay with it. And if you want to find other breeders, look at a lot of the free sites. I know there's stuff on Facebook, though I don't Facebook, but there are groups on Facebook. There's Poultry Show Central, which has ads. That's where I advertise. There are a couple of people. If you're in the NPIP, the National Poultry Improvement Program, if you look up your state, you have to use the secret decoder ring or the stock code paper and figure out what the number is for Dutch Hookbills, and then search for that in your state and adjacent states. You can sometimes find them because they do come under that plan, and if a person is doing their whole flock, you're going to have, they're going to be listed. Mine are listed in mine. That's a good way to find them. And like I said, Poultry Show Central, Livestock Conservancy has a master breeders list. It's really, I send people there all the time. It's very, very useful.
Well, thank you, Connie. Again, we really appreciate you sharing your knowledge with us at the Ohio National Poultry Show. I hope we see everyone again at the Ohio National. I think Jeannette and I will be there again. So if you're going, we hope to see you there. Big thank you again to ManaPro for sponsoring today's Duck Chat. We appreciate you. I know Connie's not here to answer questions, but I'll see if I can answer any. If anybody has any, go ahead and put them in the chat. If not, I'll stay on for a couple more minutes. And then I also wanted to thank all of our members and supporters. Thank you for making educational programming possible. Thank you for making conservation efforts with rare breeds and ducks and other poultry possible. We appreciate you. If you're not a member and you want to become a member, you can just go to our website. That's livestockconservancy.com. .org. And you can find ways. We're actually celebrating ducks this month, so you can learn all about the different ducks on our conservation priority list. I think we have 13. The Dutch Hookbills featured today are critically endangered, so thank you to all the breeders and supporters of Dutch Hookbills. We appreciate you, but there are lots of different ducks that are great for lots of different farms and farmsteads. I talked to somebody yesterday that raises Anconas and Ancanas. I always say it differently. And they're a wonderful breed. So all of the breeds listed are fantastic, and they do great on small farms. I'm sorry, my dog is very loud. All right. Well, I don't see any questions coming in. I hope that you enjoyed this chat with Connie. We'll be back next week. Sandra will be doing Woolly Wednesday, and she'll be talking with someone who, her name is Abby, and she's really into spinning. And she's awesome. So I hope that you will stick around and chat with her next week about that. The following week, we'll be doing a duck chat. Jeannette will be back from vacation. I'm not sure who our guest is, but we might just be doing Ask Us Anything about ducks. I know lots of people have lots of questions, and they're thinking about getting into ducks. You know, chickens are our gateway, and then for me, it led straight to ducks because I love waterfowl. I discovered that during the pandemic, and I'll never go back. I'll always have ducks here. And then the week after that, we'll be doing a Marketing Monday. We'll be talking about recruiting people for CSAs and other niche marketing ideas like selling whole hogs or half pigs or quarters or all of that fun stuff. So I hope that you will join us again. Everyone have a great afternoon and enjoy the rest of your week. Bye. We'll see you soon.